This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show it's actually a lot of fun. It is about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, which is one that's flying under the radar perhaps a little bit, or is going to be a bigger story further down the track somewhere, and then our favourite story. And every week we are joined by our adjudicator, our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Michael.
Now, I am, if I sound different this morning, it's because today I've come into this brimming with confidence today.
Brimming?
Brimming, because I feel like, and I actually...
With a B?
Yeah. I said that this is my week. And I said that to Sean on the way in here. I said, you know what? I'm feeling really good. I feel like this is my week. I'm going to win it today. And you know what she said to me? She goes, it's going to make the fall just that much harder. So even she has no faith in my ability to win this because I've come off a run of losses. But different approach this week. I've done very careful story selection and I'm not even giving Sean a chance. Sean, I'm going to get straight into bigger story.
Ooh, righto.
And I'm going first.
Go for it, Michael. Biggest story of the week for you.
The biggest story of the week. I'm sick of losing this one. I have lost this category every week for about the last 8 weeks.
So is that your biggest story? That you're sick of losing?
I love the badgering by the judge early on. Excellent.
Look, do you know what? Actually, you know what? While we're here, while we've got some little question marks being raised over the judge's independence, I ran a poll on our Instagram last week. No, sorry. We ran a poll on our Instagram.
Firstly, it's a we.
Yeah.
Secondly, how many of your family members responded?
None. But I'll tell you what, it was a question of whether Adam made the right decision on one of the categories last week, the sleeper story. Whether green hushing was more of a sleeper story than the everything that's happening in the global economy. And would you believe it was 82% to 18% was in favour of green hushing and me. So maybe that's what's fueled my confidence.
I'll respect the audience decisions on that. Noted.
Well, I've listened to the audience. I've heard them speak as one, a million voices speaking as one that say they want to hear something different for the bigger story. They want to hear me tackle the economy. That's what they want to hear.
Actually, I want to hear that too. That's a good point.
Here we go. The biggest story this week, without doubt, is the economy. And I'm not just doing Sean's, it's the economy, or, it's the global economy. I'm going to narrow it right down for you here because of the labour force data that came through on Thursday. If it had been in line with expectations, then maybe it wouldn't be the biggest story and we wouldn't be talking about it right now. But when we record the strongest jobs growth in a year, then suddenly everyone's paying attention, including the Reserve Bank. Employment rose by 75,900 jobs in May. More than 1 million more people are employed now compared to before the pandemic. So the official unemployment rate is 3.6%. What does that mean? Great question. Thank you for asking it. Allow me to explain in a little bit more detail. The labour market is obviously very tight, and that tends to push up wages. Please enjoy this economics lesson. And that, in turn, puts more pressure on inflation. Plenty of economists are now tipping we will see more interest rate hikes this year, perhaps another one next month, maybe up to 4 more rate rises. And that is really all coming back to the data that we saw on Thursday. And interestingly, it comes just after the Council of Financial Regulators, RBA and Treasury and ASIC and APRA, said the 12 rate rises to date haven't triggered widespread financial distress. If we do see another 4 rate hikes, I can't imagine they'll be able to say that for too much longer. And after the labour force data came through on Thursday, we had a bunch of economists, and AMP's Diana Messina was one of them, that said a technical recession is the likely path for Australia. As a result of that data, because of what's going on, we may be about to follow in the footsteps of New Zealand, which officially dipped into recession this week. In a nutshell, I've summarised that all in about 90 seconds, something Sean has never been able to do. Do we have any questions? Would you like me to expand? Would you like me to explain anything? Put me to the test. I've been asking Sean questions all week in order to expand my knowledge so that I could handle anything you threw at me. Or you can just throw me the point, Adam.
Perhaps if I allow Sean to do his story of the week.
I suppose.
So why is that the biggest story?
Because it was unexpected and because of the extraordinary pressure it now puts on the Reserve Bank to continue increasing rates because of the inflationary impact of such a tight labour market. There you go.
Oh, you're a different man. You are a different man.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, it did. Absolutely. Well done.
Yes. Oh, you know what? Even if I don't win, that is a victory right there.
Look, the biggest story for mine, that's a good story, Michael. But actually, I think this week, the biggest story is what's gone on in politics and the claims by independent Senator Lydia Thorpe about the behaviour of men in Parliament House. I reckon this week her comments will do more to right the wrong as anything else we've seen. It's that big. It started when Senator Thorpe in Parliament accused Victorian Liberal Senator David Vann of harassing and sexually assaulting her. Then hours later, she withdrew the allegation. What she said and withdrew was, quote, "I'm feeling really uncomfortable when a perpetrator is speaking about violence." Now, the Speaker of the Senate said, "That's inappropriate. I have to ask you to withdraw that." Thorpe then responded, "I can't because this person harassed me, sexually assaulted me." For his part, Senator Vann strenuously denied the allegations. We must emphasise that. Thorpe withdrew those comments hours later. Then on Thursday, opposition leader Peter Dutton suspended Senator Vann from the party room. He sits on the crossbenches. After further allegations about his behaviour emerged, former colleague Amanda Stoker alleged he groped her 2.5 years ago. Senator Vann agreed to leave the party room to minimise damage to the opposition. That was Thursday. On the same day, Senator Thorpe, in a very emotional speech in Senate, spoke of how she had faced sexual comments and had been inappropriately propositioned in corridors and stairwells of Parliament House. She said Senator Vann was among a number of men in Parliament who made her feel unsafe in the building. She said, and this is really, really critical, and I'm quoting her, "I experienced sexual comments and was inappropriately propositioned by powerful men. One man followed me and cornered me in a stairwell. There are different understandings of what amounts to sexual assault, and what I experienced has been being followed, aggressively propositioned and inappropriately touched." We have an elected official making these claims about men in Parliament House, about male politicians, their behaviour. That is the really pointy end of what's going on here. And the fact that Senator Thorpe came out and has made these allegations in Parliament, I reckon this could do more to improve behaviour in Parliament House than anything else that's gone before it. A massive story this week and a very serious one. Adam.
Okay, deep breath. That is a massive story and a very serious one. We had, on the one hand, an exchange of roles in this week's competition, gentlemen. Sean, you've taken on politics, and Michael, you've taken on economics. And after 3 years of this podcast, I was just wondering before if, Sean, you might give Michael an honorary Fear and Greed degree because he's come so far.
He has.
So Michael tackles the economy on the one hand, brilliant, right? And all of the reasons are stated, labour force data on the upside. And as you've been talking about, Sean, yep, probably means more interest rates are coming. And doesn't that make Governor Phil Lowe the kind of almost villain in this, which is probably unfair?
And did you like that I managed to keep it to one story for once? I didn't try and jam in 40 different stories.
That too is respected, but you did go labour force data, unemployment, pressure on inflation, pressure on interest rates. There was a bit of a, parentheses, grab bag of economics in there. So really good. And then Sean, on the other hand, from that reasonable levity to those statements of enormous gravity. And so I have to give you both a tie. And I think, Sean, to your point, the importance of this in how people work together and the alarm that has rung, unfortunately, again, in Parliament House. Hopefully, there is much better things that can come from here because it has to. So I have to give you a tie. Both sensational, both big stories. I have to give you a tie this week.
All righty. 1-1. No, half all. Goodness me. All right. Well, let's move on then to the most remarkable story. And Sean, sorry, I feel like I'm about to say I feel like I've used up everything I've got in my first story, but that really sets me up poorly for the rest of it. I've got some cracking stories, but I'm going to let you go first in this one.
There was one most remarkable story, Michael, and we almost agreed on that earlier in the week when it came out. So Apple's shares hit their first all-time high in more than a year this week, demonstrating just how important big tech is in the current rally on Wall Street, right? Apple is now worth $2.9 trillion US dollars. So what's that? That's got to be about 4.3 trillion Aussie dollars or thereabouts. Somewhere between 4.2, 4.3 trillion Aussie dollars. It accounts for 7% of all the stocks on the S&P 500. Its share price is up about 40% this year. It's worth about 2.8% of all global equity markets. Put them all together, there's one company that is worth about 2.8% of those developed equity markets. Now, the immediate cause, the most recent cause, is the surge after the launch of its Vision Pro mixed reality headset last week. What's truly remarkable is just the size of Apple. One stock is worth way more than all the stocks on the ASX put together. In fact, the value of Apple is worth more than the value of the whole superannuation industry in Australia. Super industry in Australia is worth about 3.2 trillion dollars. It isn't only Apple. If you add in Microsoft and Alphabet, parent of Google, those three stocks, Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, their combined value is more than the value of all the residential homes across Australia. Now that is remarkable. Michael?
Oh, Sean. Only you could take a truly exciting, fascinating story and go the full Dyson on it and just suck all the fun and suck all the excitement out of it. Where was the theatre? Where was the melodrama?
I'm still getting over my first story. That was a very serious one. I'm emerging from that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll take care of this one then. With most remarkable, because the most remarkable story is about the Australian population this week. We have experienced, as we discovered in the last few days, we experienced our biggest ever jump in population last year. And what makes that even more remarkable is that it happened despite a rise in the number of deaths and a drop-off in births. Clearly, Australia is the place to be right now. On migration, we had a net gain of 387,500 people. That is huge. And look, and I do know I raised this during the week, but I feel like we need to come back to it very briefly. Don't you think it is curious that the number of births dropped from 300,000 down 14,000 on the year before?
Why is that curious?
Well, because this was 2022, meaning those babies weren't being made in 2021. And we had lockdowns, obviously, during that time, but things were improving towards the back end of 2021. And so we were coming through. There were some green shoots, but apparently not enough. As you made the point through the week, Sean, that people were too kind of worried about the state of the economy to make babies. And I'm saying, you know what? At that time, they probably should have had a little bit more confidence to just give it a crack. Anyway.
To give it a crack. I'm with you. Let's make a baby.
That's right.
Baby.
For the economy. On the economic importance of all of this, for Australia, this population stat is hugely significant, in part because students are coming back into the country, and we saw that in this data. Education, obviously, one of our largest exports. So this is very good news for the economy. The Australian economy. This is very much specifically an Australian story with relevance to all of us here, Adam. The impact, obviously, that migration has on house prices, putting more pressure as well on soaring rents, particularly in inner city areas where we know from previous interviews with demographer Simon Kusenmacher that a lot of people coming into the country tend to congregate in the middle of the cities. That impact cannot be understated. Sean's story, theoretically, is very flashy and exciting. It wasn't in practice. For relevance to Australia, for relevance to the Australian economy, you cannot get much more remarkable than the Australian population booming in the post-COVID years. I rest my case.
Really?
So, This are both two cracking stories and both are remarkable. Very difficult to distinguish which one is more remarkable than another. Sean, for all the reasons you said, the story of Apple is incredible, definitely remarkable. That it's worth nearly 3% of all global equities, one company. It's just amazing. And also remarkable is the population growth. So I'm going to give you another draw. You're both really good competition. It is dead even at the halfway mark.
Shall we pause for a moment? We'll come back in a sec and find a sleeper story of the week. All right, we are looking for the sleeper story of the week. This is a story that is flying under the radar or going to be a bigger story further down the track. It is also an opportunity for redemption for Adam after the judging of last week, which was voted by Instagram followers of Fear and Greed. And you can find us on Instagram at Fear and Greed Podcast, that I should have won last week by, 80% or thereabouts, 82%. But that's in the past. We are focused on the future and a good result today. Shall I go first on this one?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. I will. I have previously struggled with the sleeper story. Last week I didn't. I struggled with the judging. This week I'm not struggling with anything because I have nailed this. How about that for confidence? Industry superannuation giant Host Plus is closing its standalone property and infrastructure fund. Why does that matter? Once again, great question, and I appreciate you taking the time to ask because the significance might not be immediately apparent because it is indeed a sleeper story. There we go. It's just proven itself. Let me explain. There are fears, and these are significant fears, that tens of billions of dollars could be wiped from the commercial property sector as buildings are revalued. Now, this matters to you, Sean, and to you, Adam, and to me, Michael, and to everybody.
I love it when you're talking the third person about yourself.
Because we invest in this space through our super funds, and usually property sales assist with valuations, but nobody's selling right now. So these big funds are getting very worried about what we've seen happen in residential property, obviously with prices falling. They're worried that that's also happening then in commercial property. And if that is the case, then super funds might be sitting on assets that are worth billions less than recorded on the books.
What do you mean by recorded on the books?
Save your questions for the end, please, Sean. This week, I'll answer it now. That basically they have it recorded at, say, let's assign a value of, say, $200 million, and that is what they have it as, and so that they say that their members own that building at $200 million, but in reality, that building might only be worth $170 million or $160 million because in the current climate, that's all somebody would be willing to pay, but they don't know that for sure because no one is actually selling and no one is actually buying. So that is the problem. And this week, we saw another development in that, obviously, with Host Plus closing that standalone fund, a number of reasons why they cited for that. But then we also saw property fund Charter Hall reporting a 2.8% fall in values across its $72 billion portfolio based on independent valuation. So who knows? Are the super funds being a bit skittish, perhaps unnecessarily so? It's a question that I can't possibly answer. The answer lies somewhere in the future, when this sleeper story wakes up. Sean.
So can I just interrupt you here? Haven't we run this as a sleeper story previously? I'm not joking. I actually think
I know you're not, and we have.
I did it myself as a sleeper story.
So is Sean.
However, don't let that stop it from being a sleeper story this week. It's still snoozing.
I will just say, though, that it doesn't need to have not been covered before. If there is a major development but it remains asleep, like you can use it again.
Yeah, no, look, I'll be using the global economy at some point in the future. Don't you worry.
for as long as people remain ignorant to what's going on in the rest of the world. Yes, please go on.
So my story is a first-time sleeper story here on Fear and Greed, and very relevant. The federal government made a big decision this week. It decided it's going to try and wind back some of the onerous financial advice red tape. It's accepted 14 of 22 recommendations made in its year-long quality of advice review. Big news, right? Not enough people talking about it. One of the biggest impediments to financial success right now is people aren't getting enough advice. And that's because it's expensive. An unintended consequence of the Royal Commission was about 10,000 financial planners left the industry. Those that are still there have to charge more to make things work because they've got so much bureaucracy and red tape to get through. As a result, most of us no longer get financial advice. Now, Alan's partner, Michelle Levy, chaired a review of the rules around financial advice. She handed the government her findings last December. Lots of changes. One of the big ones is that there will be new legislation to make it cheaper and less risky for super funds to provide advice. This is really important around that retirement age. So when you retire, some of us are thinking about that much more than you are, Michael. When you retire, you can get advice from your super fund on what to do. Also, financial advisors will no longer have to do as much paperwork, lengthy statement of advice documents, fee disclosure statements, separate fee consent requirements. That's something that was introduced by the Royal Commission. That'll all be streamlined. The government will also accept the recommendation to remove so-called safe harbour steps. That was a legal checklist about a bunch of stuff. Basically, the idea is that this will make life much, much easier for advisors. It'll encourage more participants in the industry, and we'll all end up with more financial advice. That's the goal anyway. It is a terrific story if it actually happens, and a real sleeper this week, and a first-time sleeper this week, as I mentioned. Adam.
Sorry, just a quick question.
Yeah.
I know this is going back a long way now, but on the 24th of April last year...
You've been Googling this one, yes.
Do you know what my sleeper story was?
What was it?
It was pretty much exactly this, except for the fact that they hadn't released it yet. But it was, and I quote, I said this wouldn't be a sleeper story for anybody working as a financial planner, blah, 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 blah. And I went on to talk about the reforms that was going on and the plans that were being made. And all I'm doing is just on a minor technicality. It's not a first-time sleeper story. There is a new development in this sleeper story, just as there was in mine. There was a new development this week. So I'm just saying everything old is new again. We can
Over to you, Adam.
But
Over to you.
Adam, please don't judge me harshly because we have done a similar story in the past, because if you do, you'll need to judge Sean equally harshly.
Oh, God. Okay, thank you. So the criteria, once again, topicality, timeliness, economic impact, my subjective bias, of course. And we have been lately flirting with the notion of theatre or melodrama. So, Michael, you doing the Kevin Rudd in that story of asking yourself the questions. Noted. Very good. I have to give this one to Sean. Like, both are good sleeper stories. The property funds, that has been a regular. So we have been paying attention to that through Sean's presentations for some time now. So I just can't give you that as the freshest sleeper story of the week.
But it doesn't need to be fresh.
If I may, go on.
Well, to be fair, I actually did it myself on the 28th of April this year. So it was
so mine was April last year.
Yeah.
Yours was only about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, this was big news.
It is big news, but just not as big as Sean's. And I think on economic impact too, we have such a low adoption of financial advice. We know that's a big issue for our country. Financial education is something we really support at Fear and Greed. So the quality of advice review and the acceptance of these recommendations has to be good progress towards fixing that. And I think that really is the biggest sleeper story of the week.
That's probably reasonable. So there we go. It is now 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Let's race along into the favourite story of the week. Who went first in that one?
I'll go first on this one.
Okay, please.
My favourite story of the week. It's an oldie but a goldie. It's watching Donald Trump.
Hang on. We've heard this before.
Oh, my word. And it's still just a cracking story. It's like watching a crazy movie that you kind of know isn't true, but it is.
Like Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah. He looks a bit like Rodney Dangerfield, doesn't he? I've never thought of it, but he does. So in court this week, he was charged with mishandling classified documents, in short, and he posted that if elected to the White House again next year, he'll appoint his own real special prosecutor, and go after Joe Biden and Joe Biden's crime family. He then pleaded not guilty to federal criminal charges that he unlawfully kept national security documents and lied to officials who sought to recover them. Then he doubled down. Or did he double up? I don't know. He certainly went on the attack, whatever it is. He called the charges the most evil and heinous abuse of power in America's history. He went on to say that President Joe Biden had engaged in political persecution like, and I quote, something straight out of a fascist or communist nation. And Department of Justice Special Counsel Jack Smith, who brought the case against him, was, in Mr. Trump's word, deranged. Now, this is the person who, according to the polls, will be the Republican nominee in 2024. If you keep following those polls, he'll actually be president at the end of next year. It is more bizarre than ever before and absolutely fascinating to watch, though incredibly troubling as well. So Donald Trump, for me, is my favourite story of the week. Michael.
That's a good one. That is such a good story. My story, look, we're coming to this is the fun part of the show. All the serious business is kind of out of the way, and now we can kind of mine's just a feel-good story. And it doesn't sound like it to begin with because I've talked a lot about AI in the past, but I've focused obviously on the dangers and the potential for kind of chat GPT and Bard and everything else to take over the world and whether robots are going to knock on your door and enslave us all. Also, the potential for it to give us a 4-day work week, which happens, I think, to be one of your passions, Adam, but I wouldn't target you with a story ever. I don't play the man.
It's not about me, mate.
It is not about you. This isn't about any of that. This is about something entirely objective. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of objective questions, Adam, just to engage you in this story a little bit. Adam,
okay.
Do you enjoy music?
I do, Michael.
Oh, here we go.
Have you ever worked, say, in the music industry?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's sounding a little indulgent, though.
And Adam, do you like the Beatles?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. That is a genuine surprise to me. I planned this story without knowing any of that, and clearly, music is a passion of yours that I wasn't aware of.
God.
You must be happy to know then that artificial intelligence has helped create one last Beatles song and uses a demo tape that has John Lennon's voice, and then Paul McCartney says that AI has helped take that voice and get it pure. I don't really know what that means, but maybe Adam, as a surprise kind of music aficionado, because I wasn't aware of that, that you would understand what that means. They've mixed the song. They're going to release it later this year, which all made me wonder. They did all that using just a demo tape given to Paul by Yoko Ono 30 years ago. One demo tape was all that took. Adam, we've got hours of recordings of you delivering judgments on the weekend edition. I reckon we could use that same AI program to create what I like to call an Adam bot, adjudicating in your voice.
But skewed towards Michael?
No, there's one fatal flaw in this.
Oh.
No AI will ever be able to replicate the erratic nature of your decisions.
You're right, because AI builds on a logical path, doesn't it?
That's right. So there we go. I don't know. I mean, I know you like the Beatles. I know you love your music. Maybe that's enough to get me across the line. Probably undone a little bit by the sledging towards the end, but hey, let's see how we go.
So both excellent favourite stories. Donald Trump, watching Donald Trump trump his own rhetorical attacks has been incredible. It gets bigger every time.
It's so ridiculous.
That's exactly what it is. Ridiculous. And then I was a bit actually chilled when I heard Paul McCartney's words about AI getting John Lennon's voice pure. So, but I'm probably just revealing this is my vintage, right? John Lennon was John Lennon. Unfortunately, he passed in 1980. You can't change it, right? Just leave it alone. And so to me, this is where the AI side, my subjective bias is I don't really like that. But it is an incredible story. And I completely understand why it's your favourite. So very, very difficult. They're both kind of dark favourites, if you like, to me. And so, look, I'm going to call them even on this.
No.
This is a PV, 3 ties in one. Do you know what I love about? One thing you've got to give to Adam. He is always positive. He is continually giving us marks we don't deserve. To your credit. And this is, he kind of comes. There's 3 out of the 4 stories he's tied. I mean, I will point out that means I won 2.5 to 1.5. But Adam, you just kudos to you for always being positive.
Thank you.
He can't give you bonus points after it's done, so there's no point sucking up.
So, Sean wins 2.5 to 1.5. Michael, very good work, though. Getting into the economy. Michael tackles the economy. That's a PB for you this week.
I don't know about using the term tackle and Michael in the same same sentence.
Yeah, thank you very much.
What were the scores? The individual scores?
Sean, not quite a PB, but still very, very high, 93. And Michael, very high also, 91.
That's not bad.
Really good.
All right, 2.5 to 1.5. Congratulations, Sean. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn and Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.